Today we're going to go through the first 20 problems, and hopefully you will understand this a little bit better for your final. The final for this particular class is going to be next Wednesday. So let's go through the first problem. 40 equals 9t minus 14. What's the first thing I need to do to help solve this problem? Get rid of the 14. What's the opposite of minus 14?
Plus 14.
Plus 14. So what I do to one side, I've got to do to the other side. And what should I write next, Ashley? Okay, 40 plus 14 is 54. And what do I bring down on the right side? 9t. Good job. How do I get that t by itself? Divide by. Okay, what you do to one side, you've got to do to the other. What do you get?
6.
T equals 6. How many of you had that correct on your review sheet already? All right, excellent. We're going to do one more example exactly like that. All the girls, help me out. What do I do first for number 2?
Get rid of the 6.
Get rid of the 6. So how do I get rid of that positive 6?
Minus 6.
Minus 6 to both sides. Ladies, what do I do?
12 minus 6 equals 6.
And bring down?
2x equals 6.
Excellent. Girls, keep going. What do I have to do to get x by itself?
Divide by 2.
Divide it by 2 on both sides. And what do I get?
3.
X equals 3. Who had that one correct? All right, good job. Any questions for how to do a two-step equation? There will be problems exactly like this on your final next week. Okay, we're going to move on then. Number 3. How many of you remembered how to do input-output table just automatically? Who had to go back through and look through your old notes, okay? So that's why you guys have your old notes. There's a stack of notes from quarter 3, and then the other ones should be in your notebook from quarter 4. So here's the whole thing. You've got to make an input and output table. It says to use the domain 0, 1, 2, and 3. Is the domain my x or my y? Domain is the x. So underneath the x, I'm putting 0, 1, 2, and 3. Now, if you remember, what I'm going to be doing is rewriting this. But instead, what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of that x, and I'm going to plug in what it told me to put in for my domain. So for the first one, instead of saying x minus 4, I'm going to put 0 in where the x goes. So let's go ahead, get rid of the x, and make that substitution, which is going to be 0. What is 0 minus 4? Negative 4, okay? Next one, I'm going to go ahead and plug this 1 into where that x goes. And what will I get? Instead of putting x minus 4, I will put 1 minus 4. Okay, what is 1 minus 4? Negative 3. Oops. All right, this next one, let's get rid of this x. And what do I plug in instead?
2.
A 2. What's 2 minus 4? Negative 2. And the last one, let's get rid of this x minus 4, and instead I'm going to put a 3. What is 3 minus 4? Negative 1. Now, do you guys see over here, do you see any kind of a pattern? What am I doing each time? I'm adding 1, okay? So what would the next number be? It would have been a 0 if I had kept going, okay? Any questions on how to do that? This right here is your input-output table. How many of you had that one correct? Okay, if you didn't, make sure you're erasing it and fixing it because you want to have all the correct answers on your review sheet. Let's go to the next one. It's the same exact idea. So I'm doing an input-output. So I'm going to have my x and my y. What is the domain going to be? 0, 1, 2, and 3. So Addison, help me out. What should the first one say? Instead of y equals 2 times x, I'm going to put y equals 2 times 0. And the next one is going to be y equals 2 times 1. Addison, keep going. Y equals 2 times
2.
And the last one, y equals 2 times 3. Okay? Remember, all you're doing, if this says 3 right here, I am plugging in 3 right here. That says 2, that gets to be a 2. Okay? You're just plugging in substitutions. So everybody, what's 2 times 0?
0.
2 times 1?
2.
2 times 2?
4.
And 2 times 3.
6.
Do you guys see any kind of a pattern for my y?
Yep.
What am I doing?
By 2.
Adding by 2 each time. So if I was plugging in a 4 for x, what would the y be? 8, because you would just be doing 6 plus 2 is 8. Okay? Then go ahead and box that in. Once again, that is your input-output table. Any questions for number 4? All right, I know we're going through this kind of fast because I want to try to get through all 20 today, but if you don't understand something, please let me know, okay? Here we go on to number 5. How many of you remembered how to solve the inequalities when you first saw this? Who had to go back through your notes and just kind of get an idea of it again? Okay. In inequality, the only thing that's different is we are going to have some kind of a sign right here that's different than an equal sign. But we're still going to do the problem exactly the same. Your goal is to get the variable by itself. So what's not allowing the variable to be alone? 5. How do I get rid of that multiplied by 5? You want to divide by 5. Okay, what you do to one side, you have to do to the other. So Mason, what should my answer be?
N is greater than 4.
That doesn't say greater than. What's it say?
Less than, but you have to switch it.
Less than or equal to 4. You don't want to switch it because you only switch it if you're dividing or multiplying by a what kind of number? A negative number. But this is all positive, so we're going to keep that the same. So my answer is n is less than or equal to 4. Now, it asked me to solve the inequality and then to graph the solution. When I graph the solution, how many numbers should be on my number line? 3 of them. Okay, does anyone remember what number goes in the middle? The number that's your answer. So what should go there?
4.
The number 4. What is less than the number 4?
3.
What's bigger than the number 4?
5.
Okay, so you can see right here, I've got 3, 4, 5, all right? So now I am ready to find out what I should graph. I've got to put a circle on the 4. Should this be an open circle or a closed circle? Why is it a closed circle? Because it's equal to. When I'm putting that right there, I am saying, hey guys, my answer could be a 4. I could plug in a 4 right here, and the answer would be correct because 4 is less than or equal to 4. It's equal to 4. Okay, so now let's see what else we could plug in. Could I plug in a 3 right there? 3 is less than or equal to 4? Yes, I could. So then I know I have to shade this way because 3 could be an answer. Let's see, could I plug this in? 5 is less than or equal to 4. No, I could not. So we know that the answer is not 5. Then if you remember, I also said, if it looks like the arrow looks that way, the arrow looks that way. Notice that both the arrows are looking like this. So that's just a way to check, okay, I did get that correct. All right? So that's how you graph that inequality. Let's do the next one. We'll do it a little bit faster. How do I get rid of the negative 4? Positive 4 to both sides. Then I find out m is greater than 10. Okay, so that's your answer. Now I've got to just go ahead and graph it. What number goes in the middle? 10. What goes to the left? And bigger. 11. Okay, is this open circle or closed circle? Why is it open? It's telling you the answer could not be a 10. So it's either going to be less than 10 or bigger than 10. So let's just see what we can plug in. Could I put this right here? 9 is greater than 10. No, so I know that's not the answer. Could I plug this in? 11 is greater than 10. I could, so that means it goes this way. Once again, if you check your arrows, the arrows look the same, so that's a way of being able to tell that you did it correctly. Any questions? All right, so for number 7, it says to graph the following functions, use -1, 0, and 1 as the domain. So the first thing we want to do is make an input-output table, kind of like we did a little bit earlier, okay? So we're going to do x and y. Is the domain the x or the y? It's the x. So what are my 3 domains? Okay, so the same thing now, I'm going to plug this in. Instead of saying y equals 3, because I'm just bringing this straight down. Instead of saying y equals 3x plus 1, what will I put? 3 times -1 plus 1. What will I plug in for the next one?
3 times 0 plus 1.
Good job. And the final one?
3 times 1 plus 1.
Okay, so help me out, Kayla. What would this first answer be? 3 times -1 plus 1.
-2.
Okay, you got -2 because right here, 3 times -1 is going to be -2 or -3, and then add 1 to that, and then you would get -2. Okay, next up, Ashley, what is 3 times 0 plus 1? 1, good job. And Addison, what's 3 times 1 plus 1? 4. Now, it's not as easy to figure out this pattern right here because I do have negative numbers in there, but can anyone tell me what the pattern is? Tati, what is it? I'm adding 3. So if I had had right here the number 2, according to my pattern, what would the next number be for y? Add 3 to 4.
I mean 7.
It would have been a 7, okay? Then the next one, if I put a 3, I would add 3 more. What would I get? A 10, and then 13, then 16, okay? So if you find the pattern, you could easily figure out what your next numbers would be, okay? Now what it asked me to do is to graph the following functions. Does anyone remember how to graph these things? All right, so let's see if we can do it. The first one, -1 and -2. This is what I'm trying to do right here. Who wants to come up to the board to show me where to go? Mason, come on up. All right, so for the first -1, do I go left, right, up, or down?
Oh wait, you go left.
You go to the left because you always want to start at 0. Go to the left to -1, and then which way do I go for -2? I go down. That's correct. Go ahead and stay there for me for the next one. I want to go to 0 and 1. So start at 0 and 0, move to 0, and then up to 1. Good job. And the last one, you start at 0 and 0, go over to 1, and then up to 4. You are correct. Good job. Now what do I have to do for this, guys? Draw your line. You're just basically connecting the dots. And that is how you graph the function. Any questions? Same idea for this one. We're going to do an input-output table. What is my x?
-1, 0, 1.
Good job. So let's plug it in. Sherelle, help me out. What do I do?
Y equals -1 minus 1.
Okay.
Y equals negative. Oh wait, y equals 0 minus 1. Y equals 1 minus 1.
Good job. Okay. What's -1 minus 1?
-2.
Good job. Same sign, add and keep. So we added the numbers, we kept the sign. Next one.
-1.
Good job. And the final one.
0.
Okay, so now that we've done that, go ahead and come on up to the board and show me how to plug these numbers in. You'll start with the first one, -1 and -2. So which direction do I go for -1?
To the side.
Go to the left, and then? And go down. Okay, the next one we're doing 0 and -1. So what do I do?
You go 0.
And down to -1. And the final one is 1 and 0. What should I do? Go to the right one, and then stay there for the 0. Excellent job. Okay, now you're going to go ahead and connect the dots. Very good job, Sherelle. Any questions for her on how to graph that function? Who got that one correct on yours? All right, good job. Let's go to the next one. Find the average speed and use the formula. Does anybody remember the formula that I need for finding average speed?
A equals DRT.
Not DRT,
DC.
not D times T.
A equals D over T.
Okay, the average distance equals, or the average speed equals distance over time. Okay, so what's my distance, guys?
27 meters.
27 meters, and what's my time?
18 seconds.
18 seconds. Now, if you remember, when you're trying to find the average speed, your goal is to have what number in the denominator? You want to have a 1. How could I possibly turn 18 seconds into a 1?
Divided by itself.
You have to divide it by itself. So what is 18 divided by 18?
1.
Okay, so that's exactly what I want to do. But can I just divide the bottom number by 18?
No, you have to divide the top.
You have to be fair. Now, can anyone tell me what number is 18 over 18?
1.
That's the number 1. So all I'm doing is dividing it by 1, which should not change my answer. It looks a little different, but it's still keeping the same kind of answer. So what is 27 divided by 18?
1.5 meters.
1.5 meters per how many seconds? Per 1 second. So remember, your whole thing is to find the unit rate and to figure out this number that's a 1 in the denominator. So your answer is 1.5 meters per second. Okay, so this next one is basically the same exact thing. Using the formula, what's the formula for average speed?
A equals D over T.
Okay, average speed equals distance over time. My distance is 160 feet divided by 5 minutes. Your goal is to get what number in the denominator? You want the number 1 in the denominator. You divide by 5 on top and divide by 5 on bottom. When you do that, what answer do you get?
32 feet per minute.
32 feet per minute. Questions? All right, the next couple that we're going to do is going to be finding the unit rate, which is very, very similar. Your whole goal is to get a denominator of 1. So Jakari, help me out for number 11. Okay, divide by 9 on the top and by 9 on the bottom. Okay, remember you always divide it by your denominator. When you do that, what do you get?
500 calories per hour.
You are burning 500 calories per hour. Who had that one correct? All right, good job on that one.
Teachers, please pardon the interruption.
It tells us that it costs $2.25 for 5 pounds of, what would we like to make? 5 pounds of ice cream. Wow, that's a good deal, okay? So how do I figure out how much it costs for 1 pound?
Divide by 5.
Divide by 5 on top and bottom, and what do you get?
5 cents per pound.
45 cents per pound. All right, so the main thing is you have to make sure units are attached. What are my units in the denominator?
Pounds.
Pounds. What are my units in the numerator? Okay, dollar sign and decimal point. It's telling you it's a money problem, so those are the units that are attached. Let's go on to the next one. Find the slope of the line and use the formula. It tells us to use a formula, so what formula do we need for slope? Rise over run, okay? So you've got to figure out how much you rise and then how much you run. So, starting right down here, I need to rise how many, Jakari?
6.
Okay, he's going all the way up to the top. So he's going 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. All right, so he rose up 6. And how many are you going to run?
2.
He ran over 1, 2. Do I leave it as 6 over 2? No, what would that be reduced?
3 over 1.
3 over 1. Okay, and what is 3 over 1?
3.
It's 3. Okay, how many of you did it that same way he did it? Who did it a little different? Here's what you could have also done. Because there was another point right here, you could have risen 1, 2, 3 and over 1. 1, 2, 3 and over 1. You still would have had the same answer, 3 over 1, which equals 3. It says to draw the graph of the line that passes through the points. So the difference is here, I did not already draw the line for you. So we have to come up with where it would be. When I look at this first one, it's 4 and 2. Addison, which direction do I move for the 4? In the X. Right, left, up, or down? Okay, for this 4, I'm going to move to the right 4. So I'm going over 1, 2, 3, 4. And then which way do I go for the 2? Up 2. Okay, so I know over 4 and up 2. Now I've got to plot the other points, -1 and -2. Addison, which direction do I go for -1? I'm going to go to the left and then where? And then I've got to go down, okay? So once I do that, I'm going to do it right there, and now I just have to connect the dots. So once again, how do I find slope?
You count up.
Rise over run, okay? So let's figure out our rise. How many am I rising up?
3.
I'm going up 1, 2, 3, 4. So I've risen 4, and now I'm running, count with me, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can 4/5 be reduced?
No.
So what's my answer? It's 4/5. The slope is 4 over 5. Now, you should be able to tell clearly right here that my line, if it is going this way, is going to be positive, because when you read from left to right, I'm going upward. Now, if my line had been going this way, and I'm reading from left to right, it's going in a downward direction. So if it goes in a downward direction, we know the slope would be what? It would have been negative, okay? So let's do another example. Draw the graph of the line, same idea, then find what the slope of the line is going to be. So -1 is going to go to the left, and up 5 is right here. And then over 2, up 2. So now just clearly looking at it, is this going to be a positive or a negative slope?
Negative.
You can tell it's going to be negative because it's going in a downward direction from left to right. But let's kind of figure out what the slope is going to be. What's my slope formula? Rise over run. Okay, so you start from your first point, and we are going to rise. Am I rising in a positive or a negative direction? I'm going downward, okay? So it's going down 1, 2, 3. So I know that's going to be -3 because I'm going down. And then from that point, I go over 1, 2, 3. So can that be reduced at all?
Yeah.
What is negative 3 over 3?
Negative.
That is negative 1 over 1, which is negative 1 total. So we've been doing problems like this, but the rise over run is the formula for finding the slope. Next up, number 17, use equivalent ratios to solve the proportions. So we learned 3 different ways of how to solve a proportion. Equivalent ratios, algebra, and cross products. But for this one, you have to make sure you're using equivalent ratios in order to find the answer. That means there is some kind of a connection between the left fraction and the right fraction. So we're going to start with the fraction that has the variable. Which one has the variable, the left side or the right side? The right side. So I'm going to be working from this and going that direction, okay? So let's see what we know. I know 9 to 54. Do I have to multiply to get from a 9 to a 54, or do I have to divide? You've got to multiply, okay? What number do I multiply 9 by to get 54?
12.
Oh, hold on. I'm gonna take back what I just said. We are not gonna work with the unknown. We're gonna work with what we know. So we know this one, okay? So how do I get from 54 over to a 9? Divide by 6. Okay, sorry about that. So if I divide by 6 on the bottom, what do I do to the top? Divide by 6. What is 12 divided by 6? Okay, so we know W equals 2. This one, there's not a ton of work, but what you will have to show me is this work right here, how to get from one ratio to the next. So let's go to the next one. Let's start with, once again, what we know. Do I know the left side or do I know the right side?
The left. Mean the right.
I know the right side, okay? So I'm going to see, how do I get from a 20 over to a 10? Do I multiply or divide?
Divide by 10.
You got to divide by 10. If I divide by 10 on top, what do I do to the bottom? Divide by 10, okay? So this is what this is. 20 divided by 10 equals 2. For this one, 40 divided by 10 equals 4. So M equals 4. Now, if you were to plug this into your calculator, what is 2 divided by 4?
2.
1/2. If you just did this work right here, what's 20 divided by 40? 1/2. Does 1/2 equal 1/2? So that's a good way of checking your problem if you wanted to, okay? Couple more. Let's do these last 2 together today. This one now says to use algebra to solve the proportion. Do you guys remember what you have to do for algebra? What do you have to do?
Multiply times 10 with the variable.
You have to get the variable by itself. What is not allowing this variable to be alone? Divide by 10. What's the opposite of divide by 10? Multiply by 10. If I do it to one side, I've got to be fair and do it to the other, okay? So this right here cancels out. On the right side, I'm left with F. Now let's just work out what we've got. What is 6 times 10?
60.
60 over, what do I still have to have? Don't forget to bring that part down, okay? Over 20. Reduce that. What is 60 over 20?
3 equals F.
3, okay? Because you could reduce it. It would be 6 over 2, which is still 3 over 1. And the answer is 3. Once again, you can plug this 3 back in up on the top. And if I was to plug in 6 over 20, I would see that it equals 3/10. And then if I was to do this work right here, it would also be 3/10. So that's another way just to kind of check your work to see if it's correct. Last one. I wrote 5 is to 9 as x is to 18. How do I put that in as a fraction form? 5 over 9 equals x over 18. Now, once again, make sure you remember my instructions say to use algebra. So you have to do it with algebra on this test. You've got to look at the instructions to see which way it's asking you. For algebra, my goal is to get what?
X.
The variable alone, x by itself. How do I get rid of divide by 18? Multiply times 18 on both sides. And when you do that, you are left with x equals, what's 5 times 18? 90 over 9. Okay, what is 90 divided by 9?
10 equals X.
10 equals x, okay? Now what you could do is you could go ahead and take this 10 and plug it back in up there. And when you put in 10/18 in your calculator, tell me what it comes out as reduced.
5.
5/9, which means it does equal 5/9. Okay, so that's how you can kind of check that. That right there is the first 20 problems on your review sheet. Remember, your review sheet is covering everything you're going to need to know for your final. So tonight's homework, you need to do 21 through 40, and then tomorrow we will go over the answers for 21 through 40. But if you don't understand something here, then you will not understand it on your final. So please be sure to ask questions if there's something you don't understand.